Okay, this has been a consistent rumor from Todd McShay, and he added to it today. Draft coverage here on the channel, brought to you by Puesto Mexican Artisan Kitchen. It is so good. You can check out their locations down in the link in the description. Southern California, Orange County, San Diego, Bay Area. Incredible Mexican food. The Adler brothers are Niners fans, and so they're very interested in this video too. So McShay has been saying for a few days, and I mentioned it the other day, that at some point, and he thinks, and he said this a couple days ago, that starting at number 6 in the draft is when the defensive ends are going to start going, and that when it happens, there's going to be a quote unquote run on defensive ends between the 6th and the 17th draft position. So he went through today how that could affect the Niners and Mason Graham, and there's a couple other picks ahead of the Niners, and it actually starts at number 5, where McShay thinks that things can get a little weird. Not necessarily immediately with edges. He says the Jags could draft Tetairoa McMillan, that the Jags like the receiver from Arizona a lot, even though for many teams, I think McShay said he's got him 50th on his board. But because of his size and Trevor Lawrence's history with big receivers like T. Higgins and Justin Ross, these 6'4" guys, that they could go get a guy who is like an immediate impact partner, running mate for Trevor Lawrence, even if it feels like it's a reach. And by the way, he has Will Campbell. In this scenario, Will Campbell goes 4 to the Patriots. He says, so Tetairoa McMillan goes 5. And even though it's not a heavy quarterback top 9, he's only got Cam Ward going number 1. No Shedeur Sanders, no Jackson Dart ahead of the Niners. Tetairoa McMillan would serve as sort of an additional quarterback because he would push players who everybody has higher than him down on the board. And it is kind of a positional need pick. So then he has the Raiders taking an edge rusher, Jalen Walker at 6. I like McShay. Similar to McShay, I don't think the Raiders are taking Ashton Jeanty at 6. I think Pete Carroll is such a defensive guy. He loves big bodies. It doesn't have to be a big body, actually. He just loves any kind of pass rusher. The other thing is Chip Kelly. You don't need a blue chip as much as he could do with Ashton Jeanty. You don't need a blue chip running back with your top pick if Chip Kelly does such a good job of manufacturing the run game. So then 7 with the Jets. He says that the Jets could go with Jahdae Barron out of Texas. He goes Aaron Glenn, feisty SOB, defensive back, multiple ways to use Barron, and then that would appeal to Aaron Glenn and the Jets. Then at 8, Carolina. He says Carolina wants Jalen Walker. But if they're not going to get Jalen Walker, they also like Michael Williams, another pass rusher, a lot. So then he goes off the board, right? So now we've had 2 defensive ends go off the board, and now the Saints at 9 are thinking, do we go edge? He said the Saints are debating between edge rusher and specifically the tackle Armand Menbu from Missouri. And remember Rhett Lewis, it was yesterday. Maybe you haven't seen it yet. Rhett Lewis was on the show. I asked him, give me the lock players who are not going to be available to the Niners at 11. He said Menbu, from people he's talking to, is going to be gone. So McShay goes Menbu to the Saints at 9, and then we get the Bears. Ashton Jeanty is going to deliver Ben Johnson his Jamar Gibbs. Hell, maybe be better. Take immediate pressure off of Caleb Williams. And so because the Bears also need a lot, but they've got picks 39 and 41. So they can afford to take the running back at 10, and that leaves the Niners with 3 players available to them that McShay believes most teams have in their top 7 on their draft boards. Colston Loveland, Tyler Warren, and Mason Graham. And that when pressed, who would the Niners take? He said Mason Graham. So there's the scenario. Now, I know, there's some debate. There's a lot of debate, actually, about whether or not Mason Graham is worth the pick. Rhett Lewis came on yesterday and said, well, he's a double. And you know how I feel. Maybe you know how I feel about this. I don't think there's guaranteed doubles in the draft. Maybe there's guaranteed singles, but there's a big difference between a single and a double. And obviously, there's a big difference between a double and a home run, and you're swinging for the home run. Now, if you talk to a hitter, if you try to hit doubles, you're going to hit some home runs. But I just don't think, I think it's too hard. I think we would have said Solomon Thomas, it's a guaranteed double. Now, Solomon Thomas, where he was drafted, is a swing and a miss. But Solomon Thomas is going to have a nice little NFL career here. It'll be a single kind of, if he'd been drafted somewhere. If he'd been drafted at the end of the first round or, at 15, the draft wasn't great when it came to defensive linemen at the time, tackles. But I don't think there's any such. I think you could absolutely swing and miss. I think there's no such thing as a guaranteed double in the draft. That said, this guy is unique. A high floor is another way to say guaranteed double. Again, I think high floor, it's not as sure thing as people would like to believe. But that said, Tyler Warren is a guy, to McShay's point, that most teams have in their top 10. And he's no doubt in need. And I think there's more missability. Here's the other thing. There might be more missability with Tyler Warren, as crazy as that sounds. Jake Butt, to reference again somebody who's on the show recently. Jake Butt, remember, came on the show and said he was a tight end. He said, I would not draft a tight end that high. So unless you got an issue, and we'll find out, Niners report today, with George Kittle, even then, what most impacts winning? As much as I would love, and I've said it before, God, there are days where I would love the Niners to get Tyler Warren. Think about how many touches Tyler Warren would have, or Colston Loveland, on this team, game to game. I mean, there will be games with 2 targets. Mason Graham, you get a defensive tackle. He affects the game on 65 snaps. So it's just that there's such a bigger upside in terms of play-to-play impact with the defensive tackle for this team, because they're going to give the ball to McCaffrey 18 times, 15 times, 23 times. They're going to throw the ball to Kittle 7 times. And there are games where you look, actually most games, Ayuk, Kittle, and you have to treat Ayuk as a key part based on what you're paying him. You can't spend your time thinking about what this offense is going to look like for the 2.5 months without Ayuk. You got to think about, the next 3 years with Ayuk. But as you know, go look, there are games, Ayuk, Kittle, and McCaffrey, they don't all get the full load every game. So one might get 23 touches. Kittle, and if McCaffrey gets 24 touches, Kittle and Ayuk don't each get 7 targets, and you get Juwan Jennings. So God, I love Tyler Warren, but compared to what you need a defensive tackle, is kind of a luxury item. And right now, this team just has a foundation that needs to get fixed. Tyler Warren's solar, and Mason Graham is a load-bearing wall. So you take the load-bearing wall. So, this would be an ideal scenario for the 49ers. So it seems to me, after hearing McShay there, the draft, quote unquote, it starts at 3, it starts at 2. If Will Campbell's the pick, then it starts at 5. If the Jags, who have done curveball things before, if the Jags were to do something like Tetairoa McMillan, well, honestly, if they go defensive end too, and now those edges start getting drafted, it creates a situation that could really benefit the 49ers. That would be my hope.